Hello! On today's video, we will learn about modern India. This topic is divided into 6 parts for easy understanding. 1. India in 1750. 2. British expansion. 3. Changes introduced by the British. 4. Popular uprising and revolts against the British. 5. Socio-religious movements. And 6. The emergence of Indian nationalism. Let us start. 1. India in 1750. Almost the whole of India was centrally administered under the great Mughal rule in the early 1700s. Aurangzeb, who is widely considered as the last effective ruler of the Mughal Empire, ruled over almost the entire Indian subcontinent for a period of 49 years until 1707. With the death of Aurangzeb, the power shifted to the hands of the later Mughals, 1707 to 1857, who were weak in administration. This led to the decline of Mughal Empire and the rise of autonomous states like Hyderabad, Carnatic, Bengal, and Awadh. Marathas, Sikhs, Jats, and Afghans created new states. Mysore, Kerala, and Rajput area also became independent kingdoms. Number 2. British expansion. With the emergence of capitalism and imperialism in Europe, many Europeans arrived in the Indian subcontinent for trade. Later, when their ambitions grew, they tried to establish colonies in India. The European powers include the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, the Danes, and the English. The British became successful in the power struggle among the European countries and gained control over different areas in India. After defeating colonial powers like France, Carnatic Wars, the British expanded its territories in India by conquering local rulers, Anglo-Mysore War and Anglo-Maratha War. Later, the British conquered and annexed the North Indian states like Sindh, Punjab, and Awadh. Number 3. Changes introduced by the British. Once the British gained power, they introduced many changes in the economic, political, and social spheres. Various acts were passed by the English, which led to the constitutional development like the Regulating Act of 1773, Pitt's India Act 1784, various charter acts, etc. Number 4. Popular uprisings and revolts against the British. Many of the policies and changes introduced by the British were unfavorable to most of the Indians. This resulted in a lot of local uprisings and revolts against the English rule, and policies like the Sannyasi Fakir Rebellion, Khond Uprisings, Santhal Rebellion, Bhil Uprisings, Mappila Uprisings, etc. A major revolt against the English East India Company was the Revolt of 1857, which is popularly known as the First War of Independence. However, most of these revolts were unsuccessful and failed to overpower the British rule. Number 5. Socio-religious movements. The policy of commercialization of agriculture by the British encouraged market-oriented production of cash crops such as opium, tea, coffee, sugar, jute, and indigo. The Indian peasants were forced to grow these cash crops that spoiled the fertility of the land and no other crop could be grown on it. This resulted in the farmers protesting against the British. Also, the policies of implementation of English education resulted in an awakening in East, West, North, and South India. This resulted in reform movements mostly on the religious lines: Muslim reform movements, Sikh reform movements, Parsi reform movements, and Hindu reform movements. While some of the reform movements were against the policies of the British, others were aimed at reforming Indian society. The reform movements paved their way for an organized nationalism in India, which was divided across social, political, and economic dimensions. Number 6. Emergence of Indian nationalism. Different political associations started to form in Bengal, Bombay, and Madras. However, the Indian National Congress (INC), formed in 1885, turned the foundational stone of organized nationalism in India. Crores of people who were oppressed under the foreign British rule started to unite and demand their rights and representation. The early phase of Indian National Congress is known as the Moderate Phase 1885 to 1905. Later, with the rise of militant nationalism and radical politics, extremists started to gain prominence. The extremist phase, 1905 to 1918, is marked by the major events like the partition of Bengal, Swadeshi movement, revolutionary terrorist movement, Gadhar movement, Home Rule movement, etc. By 1918, Mahatma Gandhi emerged as an influential leader in Indian politics. He was actively involved in the Khilafat movement and the non-cooperation movement 1919 to 1922. The later period witnessed the emergence of new parties and movements within and outside Congress like the Swaraj Party, the Revolutionary Terrorist Movement, the Communist Party, the peasant movements, the workers' movements, the States People Movement, etc. However, Indian National Congress remained the central party which received massive support from all sectors. Gandhi launched a civil disobedience movement in 1930. The British tried to pacify Indians by conducting three roundtable conferences without much success. Over the years, Indian National Congress pressed for more power and representations to Indians. Various acts passed by the British Parliament led to constitutional development and resulted in the legislature, executive, and judiciary in British India. Elections were conducted in 1937. However, the hopes of Indian democracy were short-lived because of the Second World War. Gandhi started Quit India movement in 1942 with an aim to end the British rule in India. Various negotiations were attempted for a peaceful settlement and freedom. However, the extreme communalism at the period resulted in the partition of British India into Pakistan and India. India achieved independence on 15th August 1947.